Hey! In this series, I'll explore the engineering talent behind some of Silicon Valley's biggest startups. A lot of these guys single-handedly saved entire companies,
Stallions.
and their code is the cornerstone of billion-dollar enterprises. These are some of the smartest and talented engineers working at the biggest tech companies. What if I told you Google has a pair of engineers so good, they had to create entirely new positions for them? That without these guys, Google as we know it would probably not exist. Let me take you back to the early 2000s. Google is a young, thriving company with a search algorithm so good it's miles ahead of the competition. But there's a huge problem looming that threatens the entire success of the company: scale.
The software you wrote to delete our software just shit the bed.
The internet was getting bigger and thus more difficult to index. Google was becoming more popular and thus had a huge influx in traffic to the website. Servers and machines were falling over left and right and they were having trouble keeping up. At one point, in March of 2000, 6 of Google's best engineers were summoned together because Google's indexing had stopped working. During this time, Google founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin were in the middle of a negotiation with Yahoo to become their default search provider. So it was really crunch time for the engineers to solve Google's scaling issues. Otherwise, the deal would collapse. The challenges facing Google at the time is one of the growing pains most successful startups experience, where the code that brought you this far was struggling to take you where you needed to go. The systems at the time were still using code written by the founders in their dorm room. It was never built to scale. To be quite frank, at this point, Google was a good algorithm sitting on some really crappy code. 2 engineers stepped up to this challenge: Jeff Dean, whose biggest claim to fame at the time was building a statistics program for the CDC, a program they use to this day, while he was on an unpaid internship. And Sanjay. Sanjay had some experience working with distributed systems at Google, having built GFS. The Google File System, which is software that allows multiple computers' hard drives to be treated as one big file system, greatly improving Google's scale. Both engineers having PhDs in computer science and having worked together at DEC before joining Google in the company's early stages, began tackling the company's scaling issue. Working 90-hour weeks, together, they wrote some code that allowed Google to keep indexing at scale, even when experiencing hardware failures, which at their rate of growth were becoming all too common. Not satisfied with just solving the technical problem, the pair created some of Google's most groundbreaking systems that would become industry standards for distributed computing. After fixing the indexing issue and rewriting Google's crawler, they ran into a recurring issue of having to coordinate work across systems distributed across different computers, even entirely different geographic regions. Thus, MapReduce was born. MapReduce allowed engineers on Google's team to write software on top of it that would scale to millions of computers across the globe. The pair had taken a mind-bendingly complicated engineering problem and simplified it for every programmer at Google. The pair would later release the ideas behind MapReduce in a paper called MapReduce Simplified Data Processing on Large Clusters, and an open-source project called Hadoop would later be built on top of these ideas and would go to power rival companies like Netflix, Facebook, and even the NSA. The pair would also collaborate to improve Sanjay's initial work on Google File System, taking what they learned working together on MapReduce to create Bigtable, then Spanner, Google's synchronously replicated database. Jeff and Sanjay hold almost legendary status, not just in Google, but in the Valley. Google has an engineer rating system from level 1 to level 10, with 10 being the highest honor, a Google Fellow. Jeff and Sanjay, however, are the only engineers at level 11, a position called a Senior Fellow for all their hard work on Google's core infrastructure. Jeff and Sanjay are an example of why hiring the right engineers for your startup can literally be the difference between becoming a tech behemoth or crumbling to dust. Recently, the pair have changed their focus now from systems and infrastructure to Google's AI efforts. Their current work is leading the development of Google's TensorFlow and other groundbreaking AI ventures.